The wedding program trembled in my hand, one page missing, edges bent. My daughter Sarah leaned close, her perfume sharp, her whisper sharper. "Don't sit here, Dad." She shoved me aside, voice raised for all to hear. "This seat belongs to my father-in-law." 200 faces turned as I stumbled, knees scraping the polished floor. A deadline pounded in my head. By 7 p.m., the banquet must be paid. Laughter rippled like fire through the hall, and I lowered my head. Sarah's husband smirked, his hand resting on a gold watch ticking loud. I gripped the torn program tighter, ink smudging against my palm. Why did she hide this page from me? What else was missing? I couldn't breathe. Was I truly just a guest at my own daughter's life? "Stand up, old man," her father-in-law said, glass raised high. His cufflinks caught the light, glinting like sharp blades in the air. I pushed against the table, the cloth slipping, silverware clattering to the ground. The sound echoed like a verdict across the marble hall. Would anyone help me, or had I already been erased? A waiter bent down, slipping something under my napkin. His voice was low, quick. "Read it outside, sir, before Monday." I nodded, heart racing, fingers pressing against the folded note. The paper felt damp, as if touched by nervous hands. What could be so urgent that even the staff risked passing it? I stepped outside, night air heavy with jasmine and smoke. The note shook as I unfolded it under the dim lantern. Balance unpaid. Catering due Monday, 10 a.m. Guarantor. Your name. The ink was blotched, but my name was clear, cruel as a brand. How could I owe money for something already promised paid? I thought of last month when I sold my tools for Sarah's dress. Nights without sleep, saving coins in an old jar, every penny counted. And now she marked me as debtor. My sweat turned into her chain. What had I sacrificed for her wedding, only to be discarded here? How many times did I cover her rent when she cried at my door? "Dad," Mark whispered suddenly from behind the stone arch. His eyes darted, his voice a knife hidden under cloth. "She—" He stopped, breath clipped, as the father-in-law's shadow fell. The smell of cigar smoke wrapped around us like a warning. Mark's words hung unfinished, a confession broken in two. I gripped his arm. "Tell me. Tell me now." But he pulled back, fear twisting his mouth closed. The father-in-law's voice rolled like thunder. "Inside, both of you. The toast waits." He brushed past, smoke trailing, ring tapping against the wall. Had Mark seen what Sarah tried to hide from me? The note crumpled in my fist, sweat staining the ink. If I spoke now, I would shame her before the whole town. If I stayed silent, the debt would crush me by Monday morning. Which wound was deeper? My pride tonight, or my ruin tomorrow? The clock in the tower struck 9, each chime heavy as iron. I folded the program back into my pocket, its torn edge stabbing. That missing page could prove everything, or nothing at all. Sarah's laughter carried through the doors, louder than the band. How had her heart grown so far from mine, so cold? Was this the family I sacrificed sleep and wages to protect? Inside, the violin scraped, a shrill tune rising to command. I stared at the glowing hall, the polished crystal, the empty seat. My place stolen, my name dirtied, my silence demanded. The night pressed in, and yet I couldn't move forward. If Monday came without payment, police would come to my door. If these stories keep you company at night, Subscribe so I can keep bringing them to you. I shoved the crumpled note deep into my jacket, its weight pressed like a stone against my chest. Should I confront Sarah before midnight, or wait for proof? Would Mark dare finish his sentence when the shadows thinned? The door creaked open, and a hand gripped my shoulder. "Sign it, Dad," Sarah hissed, shoving a pen into my hand. The contract smelled of fresh ink, pages too new to trust. My throat closed, my vision blurred. Her eyes were steel. What did she fear I'd uncover if I read past the first line? I lifted the pen, but froze, her shadow looming over me. The ink dripped on my cuff, a black drop like blood. She tapped the paper, each nail strike a threat. "Tomorrow morning, Dad," she said, voice tight with command. 10 o'clock, or the police come for you, not him. And then she left, leaving the paper glowing under the lantern. The crickets fell silent. The wind hushed in the trees. I stood alone, hand shaking, note in one pocket, contract in the other. Which one carried truth, and which one buried me alive? If the clock struck 10, who would they drag away first? The lantern flickered and went dark. 3 knocks echoed from the garden gate, heavy as a summons. I froze, clutching both papers, heart slamming against my ribs. Who would come so late, when even the crickets dared not sing? The gate creaked, and a waiter's pale face appeared in the lantern glow. "Sir," he whispered, "you must leave this place now." I stepped closer, my shoes crunching on gravel wet with dew. His hands shook as he passed me another folded slip. The smell of tobacco clung to it, acrid and sour. I tore it open, moonlight catching the words like a blade. "Balance due Monday, 10 a.m. Guarantor confirmed. Your signature." My throat closed. My signature? I had never touched that page. Could Sarah have copied my hand, the loops of my tired scrawl? I thought of nights I signed checks with eyes half shut, bone-weary. Every stroke of my pen, earned by blistered palms, now stolen. Was she truly willing to forge her father's name for this banquet? The waiter stepped back, fear making him glance over his shoulder. "She told me to bring it," he muttered. "But I pitied you." I gripped his sleeve. "Who told you? Say it clear." He swallowed hard, eyes darting. "Your daughter, sir. Mrs. Sarah." And then he fled into the night, feet pounding fast. I stood under the archway, note trembling in my hand. The lantern hissed as a moth burned in its flame. The hall behind me roared with laughter, toasts, and clinking glass. Inside, I was already erased, just a name on a debt. How had love soured into this cruel theater of shame? Mark slipped through the side door, tie loosened, face pale. "Dad, listen," he began, voice breaking under the weight of fear. But Sarah's laughter rose above the music, silencing him again. He clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms, yet said nothing. Why would my own son choke on words meant to save me? The church clock struck 10, bells scattering birds into the night sky. Every chime was a countdown, a hammer on my chest. If I did not pay by Monday, police would knock. If I spoke tonight, I would shame Sarah before them all. Was silence my shield, or the rope tightening around my neck? I remembered the winter of '98, when Sarah begged for shoes. Her feet were raw, snow biting her skin, eyes swollen from tears. I worked 2 nights straight at the factory, sparks burning my arms. The pay barely covered bread, yet I bought her those boots. Now she wore diamonds, and still she carved me out. I pressed the crumpled note to my forehead, heat rising. Was I the fool for believing sacrifice bought loyalty? Or had my love blinded me to the truth too long? The paper smudged with sweat, letters blurring like my own past. What good was a father who became his daughter's pawn? A shadow fell across the garden path. Her husband appeared. His gold watch gleamed, catching the lantern's last flicker. "You'll sign, old man," he said, lips curled in a smile. "By Monday, 10 sharp, or we see who knocks first." His voice was calm, but his eyes held the threat steady. I wanted to strike him, to rip that smirk from his face, but my knees trembled, and I could only stare. He tapped the contract folded under my arm, sharp and cold. Then he turned back toward the hall, music swallowing him whole. Would Sarah follow him, or had she always walked beside him? The night deepened, stars drowned by clouds rolling low. I tucked the papers inside my jacket, chest aching with dread. If my name was forged, only proof could set me free. But proof hid behind missing pages, whispers, and broken confessions. How long could I stand in this silence before it crushed me? A gust of wind slammed the gate shut, iron clanging like judgment. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the gravel edge. The papers slipped, brushing against my sleeve before I caught them. For a moment, I saw them falling into mud, ruined forever. Was that their plan? To drown me in shadows and silence alike? The violin shrieked inside, the tune twisting sharp and wild. Sarah's voice rang clear, toasting a man who was not me. "Cheers to my father-in-law, the one who saved this night!" Applause burst, mocking and cruel, sealing me out completely. My name erased in sound as well as ink. Mark stood at the doorway, eyes pleading, fists still clenched. He mouthed words I couldn't hear, throat locked by fear. What truth did he hold, and why could he not speak it? The smell of cigar drifted again, warning me he was near. And then the hall door slammed, silencing all but my heart. I pressed the program flat against my chest, page still missing. Its torn edge was sharper now, cutting into my palm. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, the debt would speak louder than I could. Would silence kill me first, or the sound of her denial? The garden lights flickered, then all went dark at once. The folder tumbled open, contracts and invoices sliding across the damp earth. Moonlight caught the ink, making the numbers shimmer like cruel stars. I knelt, hands trembling, trying to gather each sheet before dew soaked them. And then I saw it. My name scrawled faintly at the bottom of a page. Not bold, not clean, but traced as if copied in haste. My stomach knotted. Was this the proof, or just another trap? Footsteps clicked on the stone path, steady and slow. I looked up, and there he was, the father-in-law. His glass raised high, amber liquid swirling under the garden lights. "Cheers," he sneered, voice smooth as oil, "to the real man at this table." His cufflinks glinted like knives, each movement mocking me, and his smile widened as his eyes dropped to the papers in my hands. I shoved the folder under my arm, my pulse quickening. "Those aren't yours," he said softly, almost tender, almost cruel. "Sarah gave them to me. She trusts me more than you." The words sliced deeper than his smirk, deeper than the ink itself. Was he her father now, while I was nothing but debt? The thought seared my chest like a coal I couldn't put out. He reached into his coat and drew out a checkbook. The pen scratched fast, his hand practiced in wealth's dance. "I'll pay the balance tonight," he said, "if you step aside forever." He pushed the check toward me, the ink still wet, glistening. But then I saw. The line beneath, faint yet clear, held my name written without my hand, binding me to his mockery. I staggered back, the folder nearly slipping from my arm. If I spoke, if I exposed him here and now, I'd risk everything. The house, the car, even the pension I scraped from decades of work. One word too soon, and it would all collapse under accusation. How could I prove what I hadn't signed, hadn't touched? How long before the law believed him over me? Mark appeared behind him, eyes darting, jaw tight. "Dad!" he began, then froze as the man turned. "Run along, boy," the father-in-law hissed, cigar smoke curling. Mark stepped back, fists clenched, words dying on his lips again. Why was fear so heavy in my son's throat tonight? And why did he glance at Sarah before every silence? The papers crinkled in my grip, edges cutting my skin. One sheet fluttered loose, falling to the ground at his feet. He bent down, picked it up, and chuckled low. "Debt is a heavy crown, old man. Wear it with dignity." He pressed the sheet back into my chest, his smile unbroken. The smell of whiskey and tobacco lingered as he stepped closer. I wanted to shout, to tear the forged lines before his face, but I saw the wedding hall behind him, every eye waiting. If I caused a scene, the shame would stain Sarah too. Or would it? Perhaps that was her plan all along, to make me the fool while she laughed in silk and diamond. Was I protecting her? Or protecting only my illusion of her? The church bell rang once more, 11 chimes striking the air. Each toll reminded me of Monday's deadline, heavy and final. Could I last 2 more days with this secret clawing inside me? Or would silence devour me before the law ever knocked? The folder under my arm throbbed like a beating heart. Every page a pulse, every signature a wound that bled. "Sign it, Dad." Sarah's voice echoed in memory, sharp as glass. The words replayed like a curse, looping through my skull. Why force me to carry her debt when she knew the truth? Had my sacrifices become nothing but leverage for her schemes? Nights I missed meals so she could study, forgotten. Evenings I walked home barefoot so she could ride in shoes. The father-in-law lifted his glass again, smirk fixed. "To men who know their place," he said, looking at me. The guests roared inside, clinking crystal, their laughter spilling into the night. He tipped the whiskey back, the amber glow swallowing him whole. And then he turned, leaving me crushed in his wake. Mark lingered, eyes wet. But still he said nothing. I staggered to the bench, dropping the folder onto the wood. The papers fanned out like feathers, exposing line after line. Every contract bore my name, every invoice tied to me. But one line caught my eye, dated 2 weeks earlier. It showed the catering prepaid, the balance cleared. So why demand another payment now? The truth flickered, faint but alive. The debt wasn't real. Someone had rewritten the past, layering lies on top of paid sums. If that was true, then proof lived in these papers. But I'd need the missing page to bind it all together. Without it, my word was ash against their signatures. And ash never held shape in the wind. The violin screeched inside, high and sharp, pulling me back. The music twisted into laughter, then into claps and shouts. I pressed the folder shut, holding it tight against my chest. Would this be my weapon? Or would they rip it from me? Could one old man outwit two hands eager for my ruin? The night had no answer, only silence, heavy and cruel. Mark stepped close, whisper low, trembling. Dad, it was him who changed it. I grabbed his arm. Say it clear. But he shook his head, eyes darting toward the hall again. The father-in-law's shadow filled the doorway, cigar ember glowing. And once more, Mark's confession died in his throat. The papers pressed into my ribs, each edge a thorn. The truth was here, but broken, incomplete. I could not act tonight, not without the missing piece. Yet every minute lost pulled Monday closer, the noose tighter. Would I find the proof before the deadline struck? Or would I be buried under forged ink and cruel laughter? The hall lights dimmed, a hush sweeping through the guests. Footsteps echoed across the stone, deliberate, commanding. The father-in-law emerged again, Sarah clinging to his arm. Her eyes met mine, cold, unreadable, shining under the chandeliers. She lifted her chin as if I were already defeated, and the world around me blurred into smoke and shadow. The clock struck past, time sliding away like sand. My hand ached from gripping the folder too long. Was this my only shield, or my final burden? I pressed it tighter, praying it would hold until dawn. But faith in paper is thin, thinner than a daughter's loyalty. The ink smeared against my shirt as I held it close. "Tomorrow," the father-in-law said, loud enough for all to hear. "Tomorrow we settle accounts, 10 o'clock sharp." Guests applauded, thinking it was another toast, another game. But his eyes locked on mine, the threat sharp as steel. And I knew tomorrow meant more than money. It meant judgment. Would I stand or fall when the clock struck 10? The crowd roared again, music swelling back into frenzy. I stepped into the shadows, clutching the folder with both hands. Proof, lies, debt, sacrifice, all tangled in ink and smoke. One wrong move, and they would burn me alive. I had until tomorrow to decide if silence would kill me, or if my voice would. The violin screeched to a halt, leaving the hall in sudden silence. Then, my name rang out, called by the master of ceremonies. Laughter followed, cruel and sharp, echoing off the chandeliers. I froze in the doorway, clutching the folder like a shield. 200 eyes turned, weighing me, stripping me bare. Why summon me now, when the lies still bled on paper? Sarah's voice rose, sweet yet dripping with scorn. "My father will bless this union," she declared. She reached out her hand, but her eyes never softened. Instead, they narrowed, daring me to step forward. The hall waited, tense, glasses half raised in frozen cheer. Was this a stage for honor, or another theater of shame? I moved slowly, shoes dragging across the polished marble. The folder slipped under my arm, edges cutting into my side. Each step was heavy, each breath jagged with doubt. The air smelled of roses and cigar smoke mixed, sickly sweet. Memories clawed at me. Sarah, at 10, holding my hand. Now she pushed me aside with words sharper than knives. I reached the table, faces glowing under golden light. The father-in-law sat proud, glass raised, grin fixed. "Bless us, old man," he said, voice a cruel invitation. Sarah leaned close, her whisper a dagger. "Say the words, Dad, or I'll say them for you." Her hand gripped my sleeve, nails digging into my arm. Mark stood nearby, eyes darting, lips trembling. He wanted to speak. I saw it in his jaw. But the father-in-law's shadow loomed, silencing him again. The room smelled of roasted meat and bitter wine. It pressed on my chest, suffocating me with false celebration. Was my son bound by fear or by her command? I lifted my hand, voice cracking. "May this union—" The words broke in my throat. Gasps rippled. Laughter followed like a whip across my back. Sarah leaned closer, whispering, "Don't fail me tonight." Her perfume burned, a sweet poison in my lungs. What blessing could I give when my own blood cursed me? The folder slipped, hitting the floor with a thud. Papers spilled, scattering like wounded birds. Guests craned their necks, murmurs swelling into questions. The father-in-law bent, lifting one page with ease. "Look here," he said, waving it in the air. His name, proof of his duty, his promise to us. My knees shook, shame burning hotter than the lights above. The guests clapped, mistaking deceit for honor. Sarah smiled, radiant in her lie, basking in approval. I bent to gather the papers, each page a wound. Mark stooped beside me, his whisper finally daring. "Dad, it was him. He changed the lines." I froze, his words lightning in my chest. "What do you mean?" I hissed, barely breathing. He swallowed, eyes flicking to the father-in-law. "He added your name last week. I saw the ink dry." My hand tightened on the folder, pulse hammering. The truth lived, but Mark's voice trembled like a candle flame. The father-in-law slammed his glass against the table. "To family who honors their word," he roared. The crowd cheered, glasses clinking, voices rising in blind faith. Sarah kissed his cheek, her smile sharp, victorious. Mark shrank back, fear swallowing him whole again. And I stood trapped, truth in hand, but silence demanded. I thought of nights bent over factory machines, sparks burning skin. I thought of Sarah's tuition, each bill I paid in hunger. My body carried scars of sacrifice, but she remembered none. Had I raised her for this? A daughter who erased me? Or had I failed long before tonight, blind to her drift? The folder cut into my hand, a reminder of betrayal. The music swelled again, covering the whispers of doubt. I straightened, forcing my voice to carry. "This paper isn't whole," I said, shaking the page. Gasps rose, a hush falling sharp as glass. Sarah's smile faltered for a breath, then returned. "You're tired, Dad," she said. "Sit down before you shame us." Her words stabbed deeper than any forged line. The hall believed her, not me, not the trembling proof. Eyes turned away, pity mixed with disdain. The folder weighed heavier now, almost unbearable. Should I throw the truth on the table, unfinished? Or wait for the missing page that could crush them? The father-in-law leaned close, breath hot with whiskey. "You'll regret speaking, old man," he whispered. His hand clamped on my shoulder, firm, commanding. Mark's eyes widened, but still he said nothing. The guests clapped again, the show resuming, and I sank lower, a shadow at my own daughter's feast. The clock struck midnight, 12 heavy notes rolling. Each chime was a warning, a step closer to ruin. I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder. The ink smeared my hands, black stains under my nails. Sarah turned away, laughing with her husband. Her voice carried, sweet, cruel, final. By Monday, 10 o'clock, Dad. Don't forget. The words cut through the music, sharp as steel. The hall roared, but they echoed only for me. Deadline, debt, betrayal, all crashing like waves. My chest tightened, the folder heavy against my ribs. How many more lies before the truth broke free? Mark touched my arm, whispering once more. Check the kitchen, he said, eyes pleading. What's in the kitchen? I asked, voice low. He shook his head, too afraid to say. But the tremor in his voice told me it mattered. The kitchen, the word echoed like a new key. The music rose again, drowning every whisper. The father-in-law lifted his glass once more. To promises kept, he declared, voice booming. The crowd cheered, blind to the poison in the toast. I clenched the folder, fighting the urge to shout. But the weight of silence crushed me flat. The night pressed in, every moment tighter, crueler. I could not confront them yet, not here. The missing page, the kitchen, threads waiting to be pulled. But Monday loomed, the clock ticking faster. Would I find proof before the hour struck? Or would shame drag me down before dawn? The lights flickered, then dimmed, the hall buzzing. A waiter rushed past, muttering about a fuse. The father-in-law rose, cigar glowing like an ember. His eyes met mine, promise of ruin in his stare. Sarah leaned against him, radiant, untouchable. And I stood alone, drowning in smoke and silence. Darkness swallowed the hall, voices rising in startled confusion. Glasses clinked against tables, chairs scraped across marble floors. Mark's mouth opened, his breath sharp in the sudden black. Dad, the kitchen, he began, words trembling like fragile glass. But before he could finish, the father-in-law's cigar ember flared. A hand seized Mark's arm, dragging him back into the shadows. And I was left clutching the folder, the only light gone. The smell of smoke thickened, mixing with spilled wine. I stumbled toward the wall, fingers brushing rough plaster. The music screeched to silence, musicians faltering in fear. Sarah's voice pierced the dark, sharp, commanding. Stay calm, everyone. It's only the fuse. Her calm cut through the panic, a queen steady on her throne. And yet, beneath it, I heard triumph curling in her tone. The lights sputtered back, one by one, dim but steady. Faces blinked in confusion, some already laughing again. But Mark was gone, his chair empty, his glass untouched. My throat tightened, the taste of iron heavy on my tongue. Had they silenced him already, or hidden him away? I clutched the folder tighter, nails biting into cardboard. Every page inside pulsed with the truth I couldn't yet show. I slipped toward the back, unseen in the noise. The kitchen door loomed, half open, light spilling through. The smell of roasted meat grew sharper, greasy and sour. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning like a warning. Inside, steam clouded the air, pots clattered against metal. And on the counter, a folder lay abandoned. The sight froze me. Another folder, twin to mine. I moved closer, each step heavy with dread. My fingers brushed the cover, rough from grease and flour. Inside, rental contracts and invoices, familiar yet strange. All bore my name, looping letters too neat, too fresh. One page caught my breath. It showed catering prepaid weeks ago. Stamped, signed, undeniable proof. And yet Sarah had hidden it, kept it from me. My knees weakened, the folder nearly slipping from my grasp. Here it was, the missing piece I had prayed for. The lie stood naked now, its seams tearing apart. But if I revealed it too soon, would they shred me anyway? Proof was fragile in a room where power chose truth. I slid the folder under my arm, the weight doubled now. Two stories, one forged, one real. Battle waiting for daylight. Footsteps echoed, sharp against the tile floor. I ducked behind a stack of crates, heart hammering. The door swung open, Sarah's husband stepping in. He scanned the counters, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. His hand hovered over the folder I'd just lifted. For a breath, I thought he'd sense me hiding. But then he cursed low and turned away. I waited until his steps faded, my breath ragged. The steam clung to my skin, hot, suffocating. I slipped out the side door, clutching both folders close. The garden air struck cold, a knife against sweat. My shirt clung damp to my back, the ink smearing. The stars above blurred, my vision swimming. Had I found salvation? Or a deeper trap? I thought of Sarah as a girl, holding my hand at dawn. She begged for a story before school, eyes wide, trusting. I worked nights then, eyes bloodshot, body broken. Still I told her tales, every morning, before collapsing in bed. Those stories cost me sleep, but her smile was my reward. Now she wrote her own tales, but with forged ink. And I was cast as villain in the book I built. The church bell struck once, low and heavy. 1 o'clock, each note rolling through the empty streets. Time pressed close, every hour shrinking toward Monday. Would the law see my proof, or only her smile? Would the neighbors whisper my name in pity or shame? The folders pressed harder, truth biting into my ribs. I staggered back toward the hall, steps uneven. Inside, laughter swelled, the feast restored. The father-in-law raised his glass once more. "To family who keeps their word," he bellowed. The crowd roared, blind to the ash on his tongue. Sarah glowed beside him, eyes flashing toward me. Her look warned, sharp as a blade in velvet. She knew I carried something she wanted buried. I slipped into a corner, setting the folders on my lap. One told lies, one told truth, yet they looked the same. Would a judge know the difference? Would the crowd care? Ink and paper, fragile soldiers in a war of shadows. I ran my thumb over the stamped seal, solid, real. It was my shield, but also a target. If they saw it, they'd strike before dawn. Mark reappeared, face pale, collar askew. He sat beside me, whispering fast. "Dad, keep it hidden. Don't trust her. Don't trust him." His eyes flicked toward Sarah, then dropped. "She'll destroy you if you speak tonight." My chest ached at his fear, his silence heavy. Why protect her, when the knife was already in me? I touched his shoulder. "Why stay quiet?" He shook his head, jaw tight. "I can't. Yet." His words twisted, a confession half-born. "Wait for tomorrow, Dad. Just wait." The clock ticked louder in my ears, each second cruel. Wait? With the noose tightening, could I wait? Or would silence drag me under before morning? The music swelled again, dancers filling the floor. I sat frozen, the folders pressed against my chest. The lights glared, hot, unforgiving, burning shame into my skin. Sarah danced, silk swirling, her smile dazzling. The father-in-law clapped, his voice booming over the band, and I shrank deeper into shadow, proof hidden in my coat. Was this my moment to rise or to drown? The laughter grew louder, mocking, endless. Each cheer felt aimed at me, each clap a strike. I gritted my teeth, sweat stinging my eyes. I wanted to shout, to hurl the truth on the floor, but my voice stayed locked, my throat sealed in fear, and the folder's edges dug deeper, reminding me to wait. Proof demanded patience, not rage. The night dragged, heavy and merciless. Guests toasted again, oblivious to the storm beneath. Sarah kissed her husband, their smiles sharp as glass. Mark stood near, hands trembling, eyes wet. I turned away, unable to watch the farce. The garden called, silent, dark, cruel, but honest. I stepped out, folders clutched like lifelines. The cold air hit me, cutting through sweat. I leaned against the stone wall, chest heaving. The papers rustled, whispering secrets against my coat. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I would strike. But would tomorrow ever come for me? Or would they silence me before the bell struck 10? The night gave no answer, only silence, endless. The lantern flickered low, casting my shadow long. I opened the folder one last time, eyes scanning. The stamped page gleamed, the truth shining faint. My hands shook, my heart heavy with dread. Would they let me live long enough to show it? Or had my fate already been sealed tonight? The garden door creaked open behind me. The voice cut through the night, low and urgent. "The officer will be back at 8, the waiter warned. My blood froze, the folders trembling in my grip. 8? That was only hours away, not days. The deadline had shifted, the rope pulled tighter. I turned, but the waiter was already gone. Only the echo of his warning lingered in the cold air. I pressed my back to the stone wall, chest pounding. 8 o'clock, less than a sunrise away. Was this the trap they set, to break me before Monday? The stamped page burned against my chest, heavy as iron. Proof lived in my hands, but would the officer believe me? Or would he see only the forged signatures? I gritted my teeth, sweat beading despite the chill. Sarah's laughter drifted from the hall, light and cruel. The father-in-law's voice followed, booming with false pride. They feasted inside, while I counted hours outside. I thought of Sarah at 12, crying over lost homework. I stayed up the whole night, rewriting it line by line. My hands blistered from work the next morning, but she smiled. And now, that same hand was twisted into a weapon. I opened the first folder, scanning the contracts again. Each page reeked of fresh ink, sharp and bitter. The handwriting was neat, too neat to be mine. The loops were tight, the strokes practiced but false. I knew my own scrawl, tired and uneven. Here was an imitation, dressed up as duty. Who forged it? And who guided their hand? Mark slipped out into the garden, eyes wide. "Dad," he whispered, "they'll come before dawn." He looked at the folders, his jaw trembling. "You can't stay silent anymore. You'll be ruined." I grabbed his arm, desperation burning. "Tell me everything, son. Who altered the contract?" But he bit his lip, shaking his head again. His silence was a knife, cutting deeper with each pause. Why choke on the truth when it could save me? Was fear stronger than blood? Stronger than loyalty? Mark's eyes flicked back toward the hall, haunted. Not here, he murmured, voice shaking. Too many ears, too many eyes. And then he slipped away, swallowed by the music again. I wanted to chase him, to drag the truth out, but the folders weighed me down, anchors of ink. Each page whispered both salvation and destruction. The stamped proof glimmered faintly, my only shield. But half a shield was no protection in a storm. I needed the missing page, the one they feared most. Without it, I was only a man with paper scars. The church clock struck 2, each note hollow. My knees ached as I sank onto the cold bench. The garden smelled of wet soil, heavy with dew. I ran my hand through my thinning hair, breath ragged. Would the officer see me as guilty before hearing a word? Or would the truth survive long enough to speak? The thought gnawed at me, sharp and merciless. Inside, the band struck up another waltz. Sarah's silk dress shimmered as she twirled, radiant. The crowd cheered, drunk on her beauty and lies. She glanced toward the window, eyes locking on me. For a moment, I saw not triumph, but warning. She lifted her hand, a subtle gesture to her husband, and he slipped out of sight, heading my way. I stood, folders pressed hard against my ribs. The garden gate creaked as he entered, steps deliberate. His gold watch caught the lantern glow. Steady, smug. You can't win this, old man, he said. By morning, your name is mud. Your house, theirs. He reached for the folder, but I pulled back. His smile widened, cold as the night air. You think paper saves you? He sneered, voice low. Paper burns, paper tears. Witnesses remember nothing. He tapped his watch, a cruel reminder. 8 o'clock, that's all you have. The threat hung heavy, pressing me further down. I clenched the folder, every muscle aching. Would the stamped seal be ash before dawn? I stepped closer, my voice breaking. Why? Why destroy me, after all I've given? His smirk deepened, eyes gleaming with disdain. Because you're weak, and weak men don't keep power. The words stabbed deeper than any forged page. For years I bore pain to shield Sarah from hunger. Now, hunger had turned her heart toward greed. The lantern sputtered, smoke curling in the air. My throat burned, breath sharp with bitterness. I wanted to strike him, to tear the smugness away, but my hands only gripped the folder tighter. Violence would prove his words, not mine. And the truth needed a stage, not a fist. I stepped back, swallowed my rage like poison. The church bell struck 3, louder this time. Each chime echoed the ticking of his watch. I had 5 hours until the officer returned. 5 hours to find the missing page, the nail in the coffin. Mark knew more. His silence betrayed it. But would he stand with me before the hour struck? Or vanish again, swallowed by fear and smoke? I thought of Sarah's wedding gift list, endless and cruel. I sold my grandfather's watch just to cover one dress. Its tick had comforted me through nights of hunger. Now silence filled my pocket where it once lived. That sacrifice was dust to her, forgotten. And here I stood, stripped of even my name. The weight of her betrayal crushed my chest. I pressed the folders tighter, jaw locked. Would I risk exposing them tonight? Or wait for daylight, when eyes might see clearer? Each choice cut me, each path soaked in danger. One wrong move and proof would be ash. One word too late, and I'd wear chains. My heart thundered, torn between silence and fire. The father-in-law appeared in the doorway, cigar glowing. His shadow stretched long across the garden stones. "You're wasting breath," he said coldly. "By dawn, everyone will know you're the debtor." Sarah stepped beside him, smile sweet and sharp. Her hand tightened on his arm, proud of her victory, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. The night grew colder, the dew soaking my shoes. I gripped the bench, steadying myself. Would justice rise with the sun, or ruin? I closed my eyes, praying for strength, for time. The folders felt heavier, as if alive. Pages whispered promises, curses, secrets unsaid, and the clock struck closer to 4. A rustle came from the hedges, faint but clear. Mark's voice hissed from the dark. "Dad, listen to me. There's more." I turned, desperate for his words. He stepped out, face pale, shaking. But before he could speak, the door slammed. And the father-in-law's voice thundered, drowning him out. The music rose again, masking the whispers. Mark vanished back into the shadows, silence forced. My chest ached, every breath sharp, uneven. 5 hours left, proof in hand, truth unspoken. Would dawn bring light or chains on my wrists? The folders cut deeper, edges sharp as blades, and the night pressed heavier than ever before. I staggered toward the hall, feet dragging. The laughter inside burned, mocking every step. My head swam, my chest heavy with dread. I thought of my tools, pawned for Sarah's veil. I thought of the jar of coins, emptied for her dream. Sacrifices now twisted into shackles around my neck. And still, I clung to the folders like lifelines. The church bell struck 4, a cruel reminder. 4 hours left until the officer's return. 4 hours to pull truth from silence. Sarah's eyes followed me through the window, cold. The father-in-law's shadow loomed behind her, steady. I pressed the folders tighter, whispering a vow. "This ends at 8, one way or another." The clock hands gleamed under the fading night, pointing closer to dawn. Every tick was a hammer, pounding against my chest. 4 hours left until the officer's return. 4 hours to breathe. The folders pressed heavy, truth and lies stitched together in my coat. I walked the garden path, gravel crunching beneath my shoes. And then it came, a heavy knock against my own door at home. The sound echoed in memory, dragging me back to that night. I had barely closed my eyes when fists rattled the wood. 3 pounds, deliberate, strong, like a warning of chains. I rose from my chair, legs stiff, folder still in hand. Through the window I saw the venue manager, face pale. Behind him a car idled, headlights cutting the dark. Sarah's husband sat inside, hands gripping a briefcase too tight. The sight froze me, fear slicing deep into my gut. I opened the door, the hinges groaning in protest. The manager stepped forward, voice clipped, urgent. "If the balance isn't paid tomorrow at 10, police come." He glanced toward the car, eyes uneasy, shifting. "You're the guarantor, Mr. Harris. It falls on you." His words were stone, falling heavy into my chest. I nodded, unable to trust my voice against the tremor. Sarah's husband lowered the window, his smirk sharp. "Still awake, old man? You should get some rest." The briefcase sat on his lap, locked, unyielding. I wondered what it carried, proof or poison. The engine hummed, a cruel lullaby against silence. He tapped his gold watch, gleam catching the headlights. 4 hours, he mouthed, before the window slid shut. The manager shifted, avoiding my eyes. I don't want trouble, sir, but rules are rules. He passed me another sheet, creased from his hand. Balance due, 4,800, payable by guarantor. The ink bled where sweat had touched it, smearing faint. Still, my name blared at the bottom, cruel and final. I folded it slowly, fear cutting each crease. The car rolled away, taillights vanishing into night. The sound of tires on gravel lingered long after. I stood in the doorway, paper trembling in my hand. The house smelled of dust and old wood, heavy, suffocating. I thought of the nights I'd repaired its beams alone. Nails biting skin, sweat dripping, yet pride steady. Now it too stood on the edge of being lost. I closed the door, locking it against the world. The clock ticked louder, cruel in the silence. Mark's words returned. It was him who changed it. I gripped the folder tighter, searching for strength. The stamped page glimmered faint in lamplight, proof alive. But proof needed courage, and my heart faltered. Could I face them when the hour struck? The wind howled against the window, rattling the glass. I remembered Sarah's face as a girl, pressed against panes. She'd draw hearts in frost, laughing as I traced them. Now frost lay heavy between us, love erased by ink. I pressed the folder to my chest, aching for warmth. But the paper was cold, sharp, unyielding. My own blood had become my executioner. I sat at the table, the contract spread wide. The ink reeked of chemicals, harsh, recent. One page was thicker, the texture wrong. I held it close to the lamp, eyes narrowing. The paper was newer, the edges too crisp. Added after the fact. Proof of forgery. My pulse quickened. This was the weapon I needed. But the last page still hid, missing from the stack. Without it, the forgery could be denied, dismissed. Sarah's laughter echoed in memory, proud, sharp. She knew I lacked the nail to close her coffin. Would the missing page surface before 8? Or would it burn inside that briefcase I saw? The questions tore at me, sharper than knives. A creak broke the silence, floorboards shifting upstairs. I rose, heart racing, every step slow. The air smelled of old tobacco, faint, lingering. I pushed open the door, empty, only shadows. Yet the scent clung, crawling under my skin. Had he been here, the father-in-law, watching me? Or was it only fear playing its tricks? The clock struck 5, bells echoing in my bones. 3 hours left, the rope shortening around my throat. I gathered both folders, stacking them tight. Ink smeared my fingertips, black stains spreading. They felt like shackles, marks of guilt, not mine. But would the officer care whose ink it was? Or only that my name shone bold at the bottom? I thought of Sarah's first recital, years ago. She froze on stage, tears running as silence grew. I clapped louder than anyone, shouting her name. The crowd followed, lifting her with applause. Her eyes lit then, pride blooming in her smile. Now she froze me instead, with silence sharp as knives. And no applause would lift me this time. The knock came again, softer, hesitant. I opened the door. Mark stood trembling. His hair was damp, eyes red from fear. "Dad," he whispered, "I saw the briefcase." He swallowed hard, words shaking. "It has the missing page. He keeps it with him." My chest tightened. The nail I needed was real. I grabbed his arm, desperate. "Then speak, Mark. Tell them. Tell all of them." But he pulled away, voice breaking. "I can't. Not yet. They'll ruin me too." Fear bound him tighter than loyalty ever could. I saw the boy I raised, now a man undone. His silence cut deeper than her lies. The church bell struck 6, sky paling at the edges. 2 hours left, the countdown cruel. I gathered the folders, slid them into my coat. My knees trembled, but I stood. This fight could not wait for another dawn. If the briefcase held my salvation, I'd take it, or fall trying. The wind howled again, rattling the shutters. Mark stood by the door, eyes wet, lips sealed. I stepped into the cold gravel crunching beneath me. The car idled at the end of the street, waiting. Its lights glared, cruel and steady, daring me forward. The briefcase gleamed faint in the dim glow, and my fate ticked closer with every second. Would I claim the page before the officer's arrival? Or would silence bury me under forged ink? The dawn crept slow, sky bruised and heavy. I walked forward, folders clutched tight, fear sharp. Each step was a vow, each breath a prayer. 2 hours left, and truth within reach. But the car door opened, and he stepped out. The briefcase hit the ground with a heavy thud, echoing sharp. Its lock clicked against the stone, a metallic warning in the dawn. I froze in the street, folders pressed against my ribs. Sarah's husband bent to grab it, his movements too quick. For a second, the latch slipped, papers shifting inside. My pulse surged. I saw the corner of a familiar page. The missing piece glimmered, faint but undeniable. He straightened, eyes cold, jaw tight with fury. "You're up early, old man," he sneered. The briefcase dangled from his hand, gripped too tight. He stepped closer, gold watch flashing in first light. "Looking for something. Maybe what's mine isn't yours." Each word carried threat, measured, sharp as a blade. And the car engine behind him hummed steady, cruel. I wanted to snatch it, to tear the lock apart. But his stance warned. One move, and I'd be ruined. The folders weighed heavy, proof and forgery bound together. My voice shook as I forced it out. "What are you hiding in there? What page did you steal?" He smiled, lips curling like smoke. "Only what keeps your house from crumbling." My chest burned, anger clashing with fear. I thought of the mortgage papers, signed late at night. I thought of Sarah's first school bill, sleepless nights paying. All those sacrifices turned into chains by their hands. The briefcase gleamed, cruel reminder of betrayal. My knees trembled, but I stepped closer. "Show me," I demanded, voice raw. He laughed, low and mocking. "You think proof saves you? Proof destroys you." The lock glinted, his fingers stroking it like a weapon. "The officer wants names, and I have yours." Each word cut deeper, cold as the morning air. The church bell struck 7, tolls shattering the silence. One hour left before judgment arrived. Mark appeared at the corner, running hard. His voice cracked, breath desperate. "Dad, the page, it's in there. I saw it last night." He froze as Sarah's husband turned, glare sharp. "Careful, boy," he said. "Silence serves you better." Mark's fists clenched, eyes wet, torn between courage and fear. I felt his silence pressing heavier than chains. I gripped the folders tighter, stepping between them. The stamped page inside pressed like a heartbeat. But half the truth was still a broken sword. Only the missing piece could bind the lie shut. Would I risk everything on Mark's trembling words? Or let the officer believe only forged ink? The clock ticked louder, cruel as a drum. The wind picked up, rustling leaves along the street. The briefcase rocked in his hand, latch rattling faint. For a breath, I saw fear in his eyes. Not of me, but of the paper inside. What power did that page hold, that he clutched it so tight? Why guard it like gold if lies already crowned him? The thought gave me strength I hadn't felt in hours. I lunged, grabbing for the handle. The briefcase slammed against my chest, hard. He cursed, shoving me back with all his weight. I stumbled, folders nearly spilling onto the stones. Mark shouted, "Dad, hold on!" The latch snapped under the force, papers flying loose. The street filled with sheets, carried by the wind. I dropped to my knees, scrambling, fingers clawing for pages. Ink smeared under my hands, signatures glaring. Then I saw it, the missing page, stamped and signed. It named Sarah, not me, as payer of the debt. My breath caught, heart surging, proof at last. But a shadow fell across it, his shoe pressing down. He leaned close, whispering, "That page will never see daylight." I shoved his leg, ripping the paper free. The corner tore, edges frayed, but the seal intact. I clutched it against my chest, hands shaking. Mark reached for me, eyes wide, desperate. "Dad, we have it! Don't let go!" The husband lunged again, rage boiling in his eyes. The car door slammed, Sarah stepping out. She walked slow, silk brushing the ground, face calm. Her eyes locked on me, sharp, unreadable. "You shouldn't have touched that," she said coldly. Her voice cut sharper than any blade. The street hushed, even the wind pausing to listen. Mark trembled beside me, fists clenched. The page crumpled in my hand, proof alive. The church bell struck 7:30, echoing hollow. Half an hour until the officer arrived. Sarah's husband circled, fury simmering, teeth bared. Mark whispered, "Run, Dad, take it to him." But my legs were stone, rooted to the street. If I fled now, would proof vanish in smoke? Or would the officer see only my cowardice? I held the page higher, voice breaking. "This is the truth. Sarah owes, not me." Gasps spilled from neighbors peeking through windows. Faces pressed against curtains, whispers spreading. The father-in-law's name, once untouchable, now trembled. Sarah's eyes flared, rage and fear flashing at once. And I knew. The tide had shifted. The husband lunged, but Mark blocked him. Their bodies collided, briefcase tumbling aside. I stumbled back, clutching the torn page. The ink glared under the rising sun, proof undeniable. My chest ached, breath ragged, but hope sparked. The truth lived, fragile, but alive in my hands. "Could it survive 30 more minutes?" Sarah hissed, voice shaking. "You'll regret this, Dad. More than you know." Her hands clenched the folds of her dress, knuckles white. The neighbors whispered louder, eyes fixed on her. Her mask cracked, pride faltering under their gaze. The page trembled in my grip, but stayed whole. For the first time, I felt her power weaken. The clock ticked, relentless, toward the final hour. The officer's shadow loomed in my mind, steady. Would he believe my torn proof over their polished lies? Would Mark speak at last, or choke again on fear? Each second dragged, heavy as stone on my chest. The torn page fluttered, edges sharp in my palm, and I whispered to myself, "Hold on." The sun crept higher, light spilling over the roofs. The husband's watch glinted, ticking, mocking the countdown. Sarah's face was pale now, eyes darting, cornered. Mark stood firm beside me, breath sharp, trembling. The briefcase lay abandoned, papers scattered across the street. The missing page pulsed in my grip, my final shield. And then a siren wailed, growing closer. The neighbors gasped, voices rising in shock. Sarah stepped back, panic flickering in her gaze. Her husband clenched his fists, jaw locked. The siren grew louder, brakes screeching nearby. Mark whispered, "Dad, it's time." I gripped the page tighter, heart racing. The officer had arrived. The sheriff's boots struck the pavement, steady and final. His eyes locked on the torn page trembling in my hand. Silence spread across the street, neighbors frozen at windows. Sarah's husband stiffened, shoulders squared, fists still clenched. Sarah clutched her dress tighter, her face pale but proud. The sheriff stepped closer, voice calm but cutting. "Mr. Harris, is that what I think it is?" I held the page higher, my arm shaking. "This is proof," I said, voice breaking. "My name was forged. She is the payer, not me." The sheriff's eyes narrowed as he took the sheet. He studied the seal, the ink, the torn edges. Each second dragged, heavy with judgment. Finally, he nodded once, expression grim. The father-in-law strode forward, cigar smoke trailing. "Don't be fooled," he barked, voice booming. "This old man is confused, desperate to escape his debt." But the sheriff raised his hand, silencing him. "This seal is legitimate. The page is real." Gasps rippled through the watching neighbors. Sarah's face cracked, her lips trembling. Mark stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "I saw him forge it. He added Dad's name last week." The words burst into the morning air like fire. Sarah's husband turned on him, eyes blazing. "Liar!" he spat, stepping closer, fists curled. But Mark stood his ground, shaking but firm. "He changed it. I saw it with my own eyes." The sheriff glanced between them, jaw set. His gaze dropped back to the briefcase on the ground. He kicked it open, papers spilling into daylight. Dozens of forged pages lay scattered, names altered, each one tied to me, binding me to lies. The sheriff lifted a sheet, brows furrowed deep. "This is fraud," he said, his voice sharp. Sarah's husband lunged, but deputies grabbed his arms. The crowd gasped, whispers swelling into shouts. Sarah backed away, hands trembling, eyes darting. Her father-in-law tried to step in, but froze. The sheriff's glare pinned him where he stood. "You'll answer for this, too," the sheriff growled. Cigar smoke faltered in the old man's throat. I stood shaking, the folders pressed to my chest. The neighbor's eyes turned toward me, pity and shock. My shame still burned, but hope broke through. I had proof. I had my son's words at last. The sheriff's presence steadied the trembling inside me. Sarah's voice cracked, breaking the silence. "Dad, please." Her plea cut deep, twisting in my chest. I saw her as a child again, barefoot, crying. I saw her clutching my hand, begging for help. Now her hand clutched only lies and fear. My eyes burned, but I held firm. "This isn't my debt, Sarah. It's yours." She lowered her head, tears streaking her face. The sheriff gathered the pages, sliding them into his file. He looked at me, steady and certain. "You'll not bear this weight, Mr. Harris." Relief struck, heavy, almost unbearable. My knees wavered, strength draining from my body. The neighbors whispered louder, voices sharp. The truth's out. It was them all along. Sarah's husband thrashed against the deputy's grip. His voice cracked, fury spilling into the air. "You can't prove all of it. he shouted, but the sheriff raised the torn page high. "This is enough to break your lies." The crowd gasped, whispers swelling louder, and his smirk finally vanished. Mark touched my arm, his voice soft. "Dad, it's over." "You're free." The words trembled, but carried weight. I stared at him, pride and sorrow mixing. For once, he had spoken, stood firm. My chest ached, tears burning my eyes. "Thank you, son," I whispered. The sheriff turned back toward Sarah. "Do you deny this contract?" he asked. She shook her head, eyes downcast. Tears dripped onto her silk dress, darkening fabric. Her silence was louder than any confession. The neighbors murmured, shame spreading like fire. And I felt her power drain away. The father-in-law slammed his fist against the wall. "She's just a girl," he growled. But the sheriff's hand stopped him cold. "No, she's part of this. Both of you are." His voice carried across the street, sharp and final. The old man's shoulders sagged, cigar falling. Smoke curled weak, fading into the air. The car door slammed, Sarah's husband shoved inside. Her father-in-law followed, hands bound, fury simmering. Sarah stood frozen, silk dress crumpling in her fists. Her eyes lifted to mine, broken, pleading. But no words came, only silence. The sheriff closed the file, turning to me. "You'll testify at 10, Mr. Harris." The crowd cheered, voices rising in relief. Justice had stepped into the street at last. I clutched the folder, trembling with exhaustion. My shame still lingered, but the weight had shifted. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The clock struck 8, tolls sharp and clear, and the balance of power had changed forever. Sarah wept, her tears falling hard. Her mask shattered, pride dissolved into sorrow. The neighbors watched, whispering sharp truths. Her husband shouted inside the car, rage boiling. The father-in-law hung his head, defeated. Mark stood beside me, steady and firm, and the sheriff's presence sealed it all. The sheriff raised the torn page high, and the crowd erupted in cheers, their eyes turning on Sarah. The sheriff held the torn page aloft, his voice firm. "This document proves the truth. Mr. Harris is no debtor." The crowd erupted, clapping, cheering, voices rising like thunder. I stood still, folders pressed against my chest, trembling. The sound washed over me, relief mixed with shame. Neighbors who once whispered now looked at me with respect, and their eyes burned Sarah where she stood. She crumpled to her knees, silk pooling on the street. Her sobs broke the morning air, raw and sharp. The father-in-law turned his face away, disgraced. His cigar lay crushed beneath the sheriff's boot. Mark gripped my arm, voice breaking with pride. "Dad, it's over. You're free now." But was freedom enough to heal the wound? The deputies shoved Sarah's husband into the car. His shouts filled the street, hollow, powerless. "No one will believe you," he raged, spit flying. But the sheriff slammed the door, silencing him. The old man followed, shoulders hunched, defeated. For the first time, his smirk was gone. The weight of his arrogance had turned to ash. Sarah lifted her face, eyes swollen red. "Dad," she whispered, voice cracking. "I never meant it to go this far." The words pierced me, bitter and hollow. I thought of nights I stayed hungry for her sake. I thought of boots bought with blistered hands. And now she begged too late. The neighbors murmured, their whispers sharp. "She betrayed her own father," one woman said. "He gave her everything," another voice added. Their judgment hung heavy, sealing her fate. Sarah bowed her head lower, unable to meet my eyes. Her tears stained her dress, marks of ruin. My chest ached, torn between anger and sorrow. Mark spoke softly, steadying me. "Dad, let's go home. You've done enough." But my legs were stone, rooted in place. The sheriff handed me the sealed page. "This belongs with you now," he said. The paper was warm from his grip. Proof, justice, and burden all in one. I held it high, voice breaking. "This is my name, torn but still whole." The crowd hushed, listening, eyes fixed. For years, I carried their lies in silence. My throat tightened, words cutting through me, but silence nearly buried me alive. The wind carried my words down the street. The sheriff's gaze was steady, approving. "Your truth saved you, Mr. Harris." But I shook my head, sorrow heavy. It wasn't truth alone. It was my son's voice. Mark's eyes shone, tears sliding down his cheeks. For once, he had spoken, broken his chains. That was my true victory, greater than paper. Sarah sobbed louder, voice splintering. I thought money could fill the emptiness. Her words were knives, twisted in regret. But it only broke me, broke us all. The neighbors turned away, giving her no mercy. She reached for me, hands trembling. But I stepped back, pain sharper than love. The clock struck 9, bells rolling heavy. 1 hour until the courthouse opened. The deputies drove off, siren wailing faint. The crowd dispersed, whispers fading into distance. Sarah remained on the ground, broken, alone. Mark stood firm, hand steady on my shoulder, and I finally drew a full breath. We walked home slow, silence thick. The morning light grew stronger, cutting shadows. The folders dug into my ribs, reminders of battle. Every page inside carried scars of betrayal, but I carried them no longer as chains. They were proof, and proof was mine. Justice had walked beside me at last. At the doorway, I paused, memories flooding. Nights of toil, days of sacrifice, years of giving. Each scar on my hands spoke of her future. Each coin I saved was a piece of my soul. Yet love had turned against me, cold. I set the folders down on the table, and the silence inside was deep, honest. Mark broke it, voice soft but steady. "Dad, you don't have to carry this anymore." His eyes glistened, face weary but proud. "You gave more than anyone could." "It's enough." I stared at him, heart heavy but whole. For the first time, he looked like my son. Not a boy silenced, but a man who stood. I sat, hands trembling on the table. The sealed page lay flat, edges torn but strong. It glimmered faintly under morning light. This was my shield, my vindication. But it was also my scar, never to fade. Truth had saved me, but it had cost her. And that cost I would carry forever. Sarah's face lingered in my mind, broken. Her tears, her plea, her ruin. Could forgiveness ever bridge that gulf? Or had she burned it beyond repair? I didn't know, and perhaps never would. But I knew one thing now. Silence had almost destroyed me. Justice wasn't mine to take. It was theirs to give. The sheriff's voice, the crowd's eyes, the law's hand. I hadn't sought revenge, only truth. And truth had burned brighter than their lies. The house stood still, sturdy as my soul. I was tired, but no longer bowed, and I whispered to myself, I survived. What would you have done in my place? Leave your story below. I'll be here to read you.